Hello again. The second article I read this week is titled Moors and the Bullfight History and National Identity in Goya's Tauromaquia. Tauromaquia is Spanish for bullfighting. The article is by Andrew Schulz. So, so the main thesis is basically that Francisco Goya's representation of the history of bullfighting through his plates, the plates he hatched when he was in his 70s, is basically his way to celebrate the Moorish contribution to the practice of bullfighting, and also celebrate the sort of two different cultures, the Christian Spanish culture and the Muslim Moorish one, coming together and both enjoying a good bullfight, basically. Um, According to one scholar, certain aspects of Goya's prints were actually represented the best known late 18th century history of the bullfight, um, and way more comprehensive than any other written source or visual source that we had seen to that point. But what inspired Goya? Goya was actually inspired by a series of historical books as published at the time, which provided an account of the history of bullfighting in Spain. And much of Goya's work and the plays are actually not necessarily in chronological order, but I didn't think that was a big deal. And he was also inspired by a series of anonymous illustrations that he found previously published. Um, Over the course of the 18th century and the early 19th century, bullfighting was all over the place in Spain, and it had come to be seen as a quintessential Spanish cultural practice. To support this thesis, I think I can divide the narrative into four chapters. First one is ancient Spaniards hunting bulls, first on horseback and then on foot, for a total of two plays. Second chapter will be about the Moorish practitioners of the bullfight, with a total of six plays. Then we have the Christian knights and noblemen engaged in courtly ritual, with a total of four plays. That's when we start seeing the bullfighting becoming less of a hunt and more of a ritual. We know the bull was seen as a strong animal, and bullfighting or bull leaping had been present in many different cultures. And first accounts are actually from Mesopotamia with the Epic of Gilgamesh, for instance. And it's also it's a metaphor and a way, especially for men, to kind of prove their masculinity by sort of defeating the bull. And then finally, you have in the fourth chapter, you have recent incidents, recent at the time, in the bull rings or bullfighting arena of Madrid and Zaragoza. Um, One of the titles reads the following: The Moors settled in Spain, giving up the superstitions of the Quran, and then adopted this art of hunting and spare a bull in the open. Actually, this may sound a bit discriminating because it says that the Muslims were kind of giving up the superstition of the Quran, but that actually refer to the fact that they usually didn't want to harm animals. And if you actually look carefully to the visual imagery in the plays etched by Goya, um, actually there's a sort of casting aside any religious differences, as both the Christian Spaniards and the Muslim Moors actually coming together to practice the bullfighting. Um, Bullfight traces, as we know, it traces its roots to prehistoric bull worship and bull sacrifices, and is found in both cultures. Um, Finally, Goya really celebrates the contribution of the Moors with one play that states that it was the Moors who introduced the decorated metal-tipped darts, for instance, that are artfully used to stab the bull before it's actually killed. Sadly, this is still being practiced nowadays, especially in Spain and possibly other countries. I'm not a big fan of bullfighting myself, especially when the animal is clearly in pain. Um, it must be said that not many written sources have really taken into account the contribution of the Muslim cultures into bullfighting. So going back to the initial thesis, Goya has done something that is not easily found in Christian culture. And definitely is the first time that someone had such a sympathetic approach towards the Moorish contribution to the tauromachia. And I think the article worked pretty well. It was very, very informative. One thing that I didn't really understand, that I didn't like, is that at some point the author kind of dropped one note aside, saying, we should look at this narrative, at Goya's work, keeping in mind that he had like a satirical approach to the topic. But then, so he kind of suggested that that's sort of that there was his approach all along, but I didn't see that reflected in any of the evidence, and it didn't really work with the thesis, which went a complete different way, which is actually celebrating bullfighting and not meaning to mock it in any way, because that's one way different cultures come together, just like any sport nowadays. So, but apart from that, I think it was a solid thesis and article, and very informative, as I said. But thanks for watching, and speak later. Bye bye.